Good evening, everybody, and welcome again to our Thursday evening live web chat. Thank you very much for joining us to our weekly cricket chat brought to you in association with Scrivens. Thank you for all your questions again. So we've got some lovely questions this week to put to our very special guest, who is this week Tim Ambrose, Warwickshire and England wicketkeeper, and one of the presiding Bears players of this era. Tim, many thanks for joining us. I'm back in training at the moment. Tim, it's been a strange old summer, but things are getting moving at last.
Yeah, sure, no problem. It's good to be here. But yeah, it has. It's been nice to get outside, and even coming back a couple of weeks ago, and lots of rules and regulations and things we can and can't do in particular. It was nice today to actually get out there on the field and actually, be sort of throwing the ball around and being able to sort of actually play cricket. It was it was a nice day. I think everyone sort of enjoyed that feeling. It's been a long way.
Well, we've got lots of questions from the members for you, Tim. First of all, though, just a word, of course, on your recent announcement that you'll retire at the end of the season. That will bring a really wonderful career to an end, and I'm guessing it'll be pretty emotional when you take the field and leave it for the last time at Edgbaston.
Yeah, thanks, obviously, but I think it will be, but I mean, I don't know. You have an idea of when you finish, and you'd like to sort of walk off and thank the people who are there, including obviously the members and stuff like that. And we don't know if that's going to be the case. So it'll be a bit different. Everything's a little bit different now. Everything's a little bit strange. So I wouldn't want to try and predict exactly what it's going to feel like, but time will tell.
It will indeed. Well, there'll be a lot of affection for you, Tim, anyway, on that day, whether there's just a few of us in the ground or loads. Hopefully there's lots of spectators there by then. Now, on to the questions, Tim. You could get anything about any subject at any time, so get ready.
But,
let's start off with a question from David Whittingham. David, many thanks for your question. And he says, Tim, catches win matches, they say. If we agree that the wicketkeeper is a specialist position, then do you think it should be the best person to do that role? Or do you think the influence of, for example, Adam Gilchrist means that we will see less and less specialist wicketkeepers in the team from now on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm of sort of the old school. I think the keepers is a specialist job. I do value the job. I think it's really important to be able to be very good at that skill. I think we went a little bit the other way for a while, where it was all about runs, and if you caught enough, that was okay. But I think it's starting to come back. I think the value is a bit more there in the keeping, and you do have to score runs. There's no question about that as a keeper. But I think there's more emphasis on being able to do your job as a keeper very well. I think bowlers are going to quickly get tired of a keeper who's putting down catches. It doesn't matter how many runs they're scoring. They're going to get pretty fed up. And, they carry plenty of weight as well, the bowlers. They do all the hard work. So I think it's coming back. I hope it is. But I think as well, the guys who, if you look at England setup, you've got sort of Josh Buttler and Johnny Bairstow, who are both fantastic players, but there's been perhaps question marks about their keeping. I think you've seen huge improvements in their keeping in the last sort of 3, 4, 5 years. I think that's because they understand that the job is very important, and you can't just go and do a passable job. It has to be high quality. As I say, all the bowlers won't talk to you, or even worse, they'll get grumpy with you, and you don't want fast bowlers being grumpy with you.
Actually, just following on from that, Amber, Alan Plum asks, you sort of answered this question. He said, has the standard of glove work generally been compromised during your career, for example, by the desire that a modern wicketkeeper must also be a top batter? And he also asks, excluding yourself, who do you consider currently to be the best glove man on the England circuit?
I do think that glove work has declined a bit, but it is coming back. On the circuit, it's really difficult. We don't get to see a lot of people. I'm trying to rack my brain now to think of someone who I think's been really impressive. I think Ben Cox is fantastic at Worcester. Obviously the white ball stuff as well. He does a lot of work stood up. He's sort of your modern keeper now. It's really aggressive role. It's really, get up to as many bowlers as possible and influence the game. I'll put him in there. There are quite a few at the moment. There's no one massively jumping out. There was obviously your Fosters and Reeds and the likes of them who were outstanding. But I think the game's moved on a bit, and I don't know, maybe I've spent more time making sure I'm trying to catch my own and haven't been watching too much of the guys I've been playing against. So unfortunately, I haven't got a great eye on that at the moment.
Tim, a question from Keith Wellings. This one will test you out. Is there one single match in your career that stays in your memory for whatever reason?
There's quite a lot of matches that stay in my memory. To single out one, I remember one would have been, say, 3 or 4 years ago against Nottingham at home. I remember us being in quite a bit of bother. I think we weren't playing well as a team. We were sort of, I'd say, quite fragile. As a team, we were getting pushed around a bit in the first division, and I think Nottingham, we lost the toss and bowled. I think we got a wicket just on lunch. I think Trotty got Phil Jakes out, and they were 120 for 1 or something at lunch, and we thought, oh, here we go again. You know, it was a bit of a just carry on tail, and we managed to sort of claw our way back into that game. We took the last 5 wickets or so for not many, kept them a decent score. We got almost enough. It was one of them games, as I say, I sort of felt like we were really, really battling at that stage of the season. We managed to hang in on a game that looked like it was past us. And I think we set about 280, maybe 300 to chase. I think Baron Chopra got some on the eve of the third night, and then Chris Wright was not out overnight, and I think he got 50 odd in the morning on the 4th day, and we really felt like we could chase it off. But and we did end up chasing off. I got a few runs myself at the end and was there at the end, which was as well why I would remember it. Hitting the winning runs is pretty special. And finishing a run chase is something we all want to be a part of. So that one stuck in my memory. But I think as much for anything was the timing that I think we were really struggling as a team, and we hadn't really found our resolve and our fight, you know, our spirit really. And if we were going to win, we were going to have to fight back from a tough position because we were just terrible at starting games. So I think that really turned things around in that season. I just remember that being a real pivotal moment. So that one definitely stands out. And as I say, obviously, you get a few runs yourself, you tend to remember them a bit fondly as well.
Well, talking of that brings us to a question about another match you played in, rather different one to the one you've just been talking about. Eli Z. Farn says, July 2015, Amby, Warwickshire v Sussex at Edgbaston. Sussex 601 for 6, Warwickshire 612 for 6. You added 327 with Laurie Evans, and all Sussex players bowled. Your memories of that?
Long. Arduous. That was a tough game, yeah. Yeah, really tough game, really, really crazy flat wicket. They batted well, and all we could do was try and bat on for a draw. And yeah, we did. To be fair, on the 4th day, I think me and Laurie put on a packet, and I think I got 150 myself and got out. And we shake hands an hour early when it's a draw. So myself, Ian Westwood, and Jeetan Patel had decided to book in for the Wednesday Stableford tournament down at Shirley Golf Club. We thought we'd go straight from the handshake and get our 18 in. And as I say, I managed to get some runs, and then we went straight to Shirley, and I think I shot 5 over and 40 odd points and won the tournament. Won all the skins off Jeets as well, so he had to buy me dinner and a beer as well. So that was a tough long game, but pretty memorable last day for myself, if I'm honest. All round, it was about as good as days get without the win. Obviously, that would have made it that little bit more special.
I know we have spoken over the years about the intensity of matches, and you love it most when the match is really important, isn't it? And it's a good competitive session. So 600 against 600, it's not the sort of game that you normally would go for, and yet you did hang in there for 150 odd.
Yeah, strangely, I was quite pleased with myself because I'm terrible at getting runs in those situations. And yet, you know, there are times where you do have to do. I think the fact that they had a big score on and we were having a fight helped. The fact I was against my old club, and I got 99 against them first time I played them, and I hadn't got 100. So I really wanted to get across that. And then there's also, as the game lingers on, you don't want to, force the guys behind you to have to come in and sort of bat 40 minutes against, the opening bowlers bowling some seam or spin, trying to get their first wicket. That's not much fun for anyone else. So, you've kind of got a bit of responsibility to finish the job.
Question from Peter Titmus. Thank you, Peter, for your questions. He asks 2 very different ones. First of all, Amby, do you look back on your Test career and feel pleased that you played 11 tests, or does part of you regret that you didn't get the chance to play more?
I think you do both. I think everyone does both. I'm proud of my effort when I'm played. I'm proud that I got there. I'm proud. I feel I didn't let anyone down when I was there. I certainly gave it everything that I had at the time. I wish I'd have had, and this will go for many people, I wish I'd have had a little bit more information and understanding of my own game and been a bit stronger with that. I think I could have fared a bit better and maybe gone a bit longer. But ultimately as well, I don't really think I fit that well into that setup at the time. I think they were looking for different characters perhaps. And I think Matt Pryor was playing really good cricket at the time, and I think he suited that mould, and they were right in that decision. I guess in the long run they were proved right. But yeah, I'm proud of what I achieved there, and the fact that I got there and got to find out. You know, and at the end of the day, maybe if the answer was, you know, you weren't quite good enough, I got to get that. I got to find that answer. I got to get that answer, and you know, it'd be foolish after all this time not to be very proud of that. But I don't think anyone finishes their career, whether it be, you know, 10, 11 tests or 110 or 120 tests these days, without a little bit of, I could have done a bit more there, I could have done a bit more. That's very much our nature. That's how we try and improve, I think, as elite sportsmen. So, yeah, I'd say there's definitely both emotions involved in that. But, yeah, ultimately, you'd like to think you hope you settle on the I was proud of that, and that was a good time, I guess.
Got a couple of other questions about your England career, actually, Tim. Terry Wright actually says, do you feel, or did you feel, a bit unfairly treated by the selectors? Of course, if I remember rightly, you got 80-odd not out in your last test innings, I think, or 70-odd not out. Yeah,
I mean, my story's not unfamiliar. I've spoken to a lot of players, and yeah, I'd say at the time I did feel very sort of let down a little bit in that, you know, I'd done everything that was asked of me, and when I was left out, it was a case of, you know, I was sat down and told, you know, Matt's batting really well. He's scoring a lot of runs. I'd been, you know, pushed around the order a little bit and hadn't really been given a firm spot to settle. So, you know, I felt a little bit harsh done by, but the question was obviously, what do I do? How do I get back in? What do you need from me? And the answer was go and score runs. And I went back to county cricket, and I absolutely banged runs out for the first 4 or 5 games. Played a Lions game against the West Indies, got 100 there. With the next highest score in the game, I think, was 40. And they never said another word to me after that about anything. So, and, you know, I found out I'd lost my incremental England contract, you know, the third morning of a 4-day game, just through the grapevine sort of thing. You know, no one had informed me of that. So at the time, I think the communication wasn't great. I mean, even if I'd have done which I did do, what they asked me to do, even then, you don't expect it's going to happen. But it'd be nice to have had a conversation if you've ticked the boxes. But as I say, my experience with that was not unique, certainly at that time and before that. I'd like to think it's got a bit better since then. But yeah, I think everyone who misses out, you want to play. You desperately want to play. You desperately want another chance to prove yourself. You want to prove to yourself how good you are. And you constantly want to play. So, you know, I don't think anyone's going to be left out. If you're left out and you don't feel a little bit aggrieved, then, you know, you're probably not in the right frame of mind, because we're all very competitive and we all want to play every time. So, yeah, I guess that would be a fair feeling. I don't think my situation was perfectly dealt with, but as I say, that's not unique. It's not unique at all, really.
Matt Grubb asks, Tim, thank you, Matt, for your question. And he says to you, Ambi, best of luck in your retirement. Was wicket keeping in test matches more difficult or different to what you were used to? And if so, why?
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I would say it is. It's the scrutiny. Everything with test cricket is the scrutiny, the pressure. The games are... They're 5 days, but it's a 7-day. It's the build-up, you know, that you've got to do all manner of things to, you know, do the right things to get everything in order. There's cameras absolutely everywhere. There's people taking your technique apart. You know, you look up at the screen and there's sort of, you know, doing some piece and sort of taking apart whether you're batting or keeping or whatever it is. And those are all things you have to learn to handle, learn to deal with. So I think that is the real challenge. I think that the technique of it doesn't change a great deal. The bowlers are obviously brilliant, but some of the guys we keep doing first-class cricket, most of them are brilliant bowlers as well. It's more just feeling comfortable in that environment. And I think that either takes a bit of time or, you know, being that kind of character, knowing how to handle it, you know. And I think some guys have both. Some guys manage by one or the other, and some maybe don't have it. But it's a very noticeable thing that you really do have to, if you're aware of it, it helps. And how you're going to, you know, what tools you're going to use to overcome it and how to sort of deal with that kind of pressure and scrutiny, I think is important. But that's, you know, that I would say that's the big difference between the two.
I'm sure you're right. And Peter has just actually sent us a question on the Zoom group chat. Of course, everybody, this is live. So if a question occurs to you that you would like put into Tim, then do just pop it on the Zoom group chat. Peter's question, Amby, is I met you in Aqua Restaurant in Barbados in 2009 when you were having dinner with Alistair Cook, Ian Bell and Ryan Sidebottom. Who was the best company at the dinner table and why?
Oh, I don't know. The waiter had some pretty good chat, I think, to be honest, out of those three. No, there's some fantastic guys you've named there. Yeah, no, good times. And, you know, the beauty of hanging around them boys is, you know, they take you to a probably an expensive restaurant, as you were there as well. I'm sure it was expensive and nice restaurant in Barbados. And they usually end up, you know, playing some sort of credit card roulette for the bill where the loser pays for the whole lot. And yeah, the youngest lad there usually gets stung with that bill. So yeah, that was probably mine, I would imagine there. So if I wasn't in a great mood, I probably saw that coming at the time. And I was with those three as well. So
onto your wicket keeping, Amby. Carl Jordan, thank you for your questions as always, Carl. And he asks, what was your most memorable catch or stumping that you made for England and for Warwickshire?
My favourite stumping was a T20 game at Glamorgan. A little bit of rain around, I think, quite a shortened game. And Heath Street wanted me to stand up. Jimmy Marr, the Queensland left-hand batter, was batting, and Heath Street wanted me to stand up, and he wasn't that slow in his day streak. Bearing in mind they only had 4 overs to bowl, or he might have had 2 or 3 that night, and, you know, he was trying his best. A little bit greasy, and he sort of made me stand up. I was like, oh, God, here we go. And Jimmy Marr decided to run at him anyway. Streaky saw him coming and banged it in as hard as he could. Sort of fizz past Jimmy Marr's ear as he tried to pull it, and somehow took it up here over my left shoulder and managed to switch hands and get the bails off. I was pretty pleased with that. I don't really know how that one happened. But I remember that distinctly because I remember Jimmy Marr turning around and sort of going, you know, great. It's probably a swear word, being an Aussie, work, mate. He was pretty impressed with it as well. So, yeah, I do remember that one because it was quite unusual, I think, at that time to be standing up to Streaky at, you know, in T20s back then.
It was quite a nifty stumping in the 2016 final, wasn't there? I seem to recall.
Off the leg side, off
Yeah.
Tiki. Yeah, I remember that one. It would have been Steve Davies was the batter. He's a keeper as well, and I think he would have been pretty disappointed to fall over the old classic leg side sort of drag down. And the keepers are usually all over that one. That always feels pretty good, especially against another keeper.
Another question from Carl. How did your career as a wicketkeeper start, and who was your greatest influence?
It started, I played one sort of young game and I bowled. And then I went to sort of trials for the next level up. And I had to field sort of 20, 30 overs, and they didn't bowl me, and I was bored out my head. So we went back the next week for the trials, and I said to my dad, I want to try wicket keeping. And he said, okay, great, no problem. And our family had a hardware store at the time, so he took me in the hardware store and we found a pair of marigold gloves and some sort of gardening gloves. And he said, he gave me the marigold. I said, well, there you go, they can be your inners, and you can have these garden gloves for for your keeping gloves. And there you go, away you go. And we sort of got home, and my mum sort of saw what I had on and what I was sort of doing in the backyard practicing, and she was like, you can't send him to cricket like that. So she forced him to go and get me a proper pair of keeping gloves, and that was it really. I went to those trials and I just loved it. I got to throw myself around and was always involved, and I was never going to do anything except keep at that stage. I absolutely loved it, loved being involved in the game as much as I could. And my early influences were, Healy was massive for me growing up in Australia. He was such a solid player and competitor for Australia for so many years. And it really sort of, he trained so hard and really was defined about the art form itself of keeping, much like, you know, many of the great England keepers in the past as well. And, you know, a technician really was what I was looking for as a keeper at that stage. So as a youngster, he was definitely an influence for me.
David Whitlock asks about that time of your early career over in Australia. And he says that you've had congratulations on a fantastic career. Looking back, do you have any good memories or any memories of your early playing days for New South Wales junior teams playing cricket and sometimes opening the batting? And how different, Amby, is cricket? It's a really fatuous question in some ways, but cricket for youngsters in Australia and England, is there a big difference in intensity?
Yeah, well, for me, it was a long time ago, not even 2 decades ago. So I do have memories of it. I remember the wickets being a lot flatter, a lot harder. There was a lot of back foot batting. I think my technique, even now, after 20 years here, is still very much honed, very much more influenced by back foot, more bouncy wickets. So I found that there. I found it was tough, but it was no tougher than what I imagine it would have been here, trying to make your way through. I enjoyed it. It was good. We used to have to play in Sydney all the time, and where I was from was, you know, just over 3 hours away. So it was always a tough ask on my dad having to drive me, you know, down to Sydney probably twice a week and back for games and training and things like that. It was always a big ask. I always remember that. And I always remember with him making that effort that I wanted to make sure I didn't waste my time there. So, you know, it was a good, really good learning curve and experience for me. But you know, the opportunity I got here at 17, I wouldn't have got there. I mean, Adam Gilchrist was from New South Wales, and he had to go to Western Australia because he wanted to bat and keep, and they very much wanted someone who was either going to keep or bat. So he had to make a decision, and you know, I sort of saw that coming down the road, and I knew it was going to be a few years away. And to get an opportunity to further my game as a professional here at 17 was an absolute no-brainer. So, you know, I have no regrets with that decision at all.
Moving forward a few years from that, Kevin Richardson asks, Amby, you were part of the championship winning side, of course, in 2012. A big part of that was the opening bowling pair of Chris Wright and Keith Barker, very different bowlers. It must have been great fun to keep to them when they were flying through that season.
Yeah, that was fantastic, Barks and Wrighty. They complemented each other brilliantly as new ball bowlers. Both moved the ball a lot in the air, but the different angles. They used different skills. You know, and both really strong characters and strong competitors who really knew what they were doing and knew, you know, how they wanted to do it. And, you know, it takes a lot of pressure off everyone when you've got two guys starting out an innings game who just know what they're doing. They just had their games under control, and everyone had full confidence in them, and they were a damn good pair. And you know, they're both still going strong now, and that's great. But yeah, as you said, that was a huge partnership, a huge pairing for us in those years, and you know, we were a good team then as well.
And it was quite a magical day, wasn't it? At New Road, wasn't it, when the championship was clinched in the sunshine? That, I'm guessing, I mean, you've won all the trophies with the Bears, haven't you? But I'm guessing that's up there with your special memories.
It was definitely up there. I mean, I was a bit sad, and it was a bit tarnished me slightly that I wasn't able to play that game. I was injured. I'm not sure if that was when I tore my quad sitting on the balcony at Old Trafford, I think, a week or two earlier, something ridiculous like that. But I wasn't actually able to play that game. So yeah, it was a little bit of an odd feeling not to be out there when it all happened. But yeah, that was immense, and I think it was a huge reward for the work we put in the year before and come so close. And you know, I've often said that when we finished the year before down at the Rose Bowl and didn't pick up those wickets we needed on the last day to win. I remember looking around the change room sort of, you know, half an hour later after I'd sort of picked my head up and thought that there's no doubt we're winning this next year. There's no one's going to stop us next year. And as I say, when we did win it, it felt, to me, it felt like a formality. It was going to happen almost 12 months before that. That side was too good and too determined after that to get it right as well.
Question from Michael Ratcliffe. Thank you, Michael, for sending in your question, which is, Amby, who have been the most difficult pace and slow bowlers that you've kept to in your career?
Pace-wise, anyone who wobbles it, as we call it in the air. So when the ball moves after the bat, and sort of, you see a lot of it at Lords and places like that, but Edgbaston's not shy of it as well. Chris Wokes wobbles it a lot. Boyd Rankin used to get horrible amount of wobble at a crazy amount of speed. So he was he was at times quite dangerous. I remember a game, I think my last test in Bridgetown, where Ryan Sidebottom, I think he took might have been a third or fourth new ball. It was, it was that flat, that wicket. But he ran in and bowled it. And for some reason, I don't know what happened there, but if the ball was out of shape or something, but I went through about 2 overs of him where I wasn't even trying to catch the ball. I was just trying to stop it without breaking any fingers or wearing any in the face. That was absolutely extraordinary amount of wobble there. That's always makes life tough. Spin wise, I'd say Jeet is the hardest that I've kept to, but the most enjoyable as well. I mean, you're right in the seat there, and it's great fun. But the pace he bowls into those holes on some days, it took me quite a while to learn to forgive myself if if one sort of bounced over my left shoulder or out of the rough or something like that. I was very hard on myself about those, and then after a while, I sort of started to understand that I don't think it was humanly possible to stop some of the deliveries he could bowl at that pace. So, he was tough, but yeah, what a great challenge that was. But way more fun than the wobbling ball. That's not fun.
I can imagine keeping to Boyd Rankin at high wouldn't constitute fun, would it? But Eli Zedfan refers to spinners. You mentioned Jeets there, Amby. And Eli, thank you, Eli, for your question. And he says, during your career, Amby, you kept a lot to Mushtaq Ahmed and to Jeetan Patel, two of the great spinners of their era. Which was the easiest to keep to? And can you compare them for us as spinners and blokes?
Yeah, I would say Mushy was the easier of the two to keep to. He basically just attacked the stumps, and because he had the variation, he could spin it both ways. You'd see batters who couldn't pick him quite early, and you'd see him sort of set them up, and as soon as that one left his hand, you knew they hadn't picked. You could almost just sit back and sort of watch it almost as if you weren't there. It was theatre, to be honest. It was brilliant to watch. His skill, he's just used to bamboozle people, but he always attacked the stump. So as a keeper, you didn't get a ton of work. If they missed it, generally they were LB or bowled. So he didn't try and beat too many people on the outside. He used to try and run it through the right-handers. So I mean, he didn't give you as much work, and as I say, you got a great view of it. Jeets, however, I think relies on his keeper a lot. He needs different modes. He needs to work both sides of batters. Try and nick them off and bowl them through the gate. So, different kind of bowler. I'd say harder to keep to, but outstanding in his own right. But as blokes, I would say the Mushtaq Ahmed I worked with and knew and know wouldn't recognise the Mushtaq Ahmed I've heard he used to be. But I would say Jeetan Patel is probably a pretty close model of the Mushtaq Ahmed he used to be. So I kind of managed to work with Mushy in both eras with only managing to work with him in one. Jeets is a fantastic guy. He's an incredibly hard competitor, tough as nails, and absolutely loves a fight out in the middle. But he's a great bloke off the field. He does all the things I enjoy as well. We've got similar sense of humour and personality, and he knows how to relax and unwind, and he certainly knows how to enjoy when someone does well, and enjoy when the team's doing well, and make sure to savour those moments. So I think that means a lot to him, and I've always enjoyed those as well. Mushy's just a legend of a man, absolute legend of a man who's done so much for so many, and he he's everyone knows Mushy with a big smile on his face and knows him with a lot of fondness.
He was quite partial to appealing, wasn't he, Mushy, Amby? Were you ever encouraged to join in, or did you just leave it to him?
He used to tell me off occasionally for not joining in, but I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm a keeper. I'll sort of, be optimistic about things. But always, I think you can. I think I give it away a bit too easy if I'm really faking it, really putting it on, and as a result, it's not a great look for me or anyone else. But yeah, I'm not sure Mushy could quite see the stumps a lot of the time. So he was probably guessing, but I'm sure it was an honest guess from Mushy, no doubt.
Very diplomatic, Amby. Richard Durose says, who was the fastest bowler you ever kept to?
There's been some. Boyd Rankin in his pomp was pretty hairy at times. I remember first morning of a test against Africa at the Oval, and I think Steve Harmison had been left out of the team for, probably 4, 5, 6 months maybe, and he wasn't particularly pleased about it. He'd gone back to Durham and bowled the lights out, and he got back in the team, I think, for the last test against South Africa, and he had a point to prove. And I think he bowled the first 5 balls. I think they more or less just hit Graham Smith. I don't think he moved much. He was getting that bounce and sort of bring it back into Smith around his ribs and his arms, and it was just brutal. And I think the 6th ball, Smith managed to sort of leave it and get out of the way. And as I went to take it, it just kept coming and just hit me, just kept rising and just hit me in the face. Basically, went straight through my gloves and hit me in the mouth and split my lip. And I realised at that point I was probably a little too close, but he was really had his tail up, and he was really had a point to prove. But we hadn't really picked up how quick he was bowling at the time, because he kept hitting Smith. So once that happened, I sort of went back a few strides. But Harmy in his Flintoff, obviously hit your gloves so hard. He used to hit the bat so hard, but Harmison in that spell in particular at the Oval, to make someone as good as Graham Smith look, a little bit uncomfortable and quite rushed, that takes some doing.
Talking of bowlers that hit the gloves hard, and our next question is from Charles Ross, who says, Tim, you only took 1 wicket in first-class cricket at a cost of just 1 run off only 17 balls, giving you an average of 1, a strike rate of a wicket every 17 balls, and an economy rate of 0.35 runs and over. Can you describe the wicket to us, and do you feel various captains were criminally negligent in overlooking you as a bowler?
Well, firstly, the stats don't lie, do they? So I think some captains really did miss a trick there. But as far as the wicket, this young lad, Adam Voges, I think, was it Voges, something like that. I think he was doing okay at the time in international cricket, but he was on 90 odd, and the lads were having a hard time trying to get him out of the crease. So at some point, as a senior player, you've got to take the reins and say, look, I'll do a job for you here, boss. Don't worry, this is my turn. Gave him a look at a couple, and sensed he was going to try and eye it up. So sort of made sure I just got over the top of one with a bit more dip and a bit more spin, and it just bits a little bit. He was maybe just a little bit done in the air, and top edge went up, and I looked out to see who it was, and it was Keith Barker, who's not famous for his high catches. We used to have some fun with him in training with that, and he sort of had a side glance at me, and I thought he's going to drop this. He's going to run the other way, or say the sun's in his eyes or something like that. But luckily, professionalism paid off, and Keith, he did the right thing, and he held on to a good grab. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. But those years of hard work sort of pay off. So, it's nice to know. The over I'd bowled before, the one run I'd gone for was probably about 14 years, prior to that. So it had been a long wait for the next opportunity, but I wasn't gonna let my captain down.
Just in case any of the members aren't ready.
By the way, that's pretty good.
Sorry, Tim.
I've kept a straight face through that entire story.
Yeah, that was wonderful. It's almost exactly as I recall it as well. Just for the members that don't recall, this was on the very last knock-ins of a championship match at Lords, when Amby came on and did Adam Voges up like a kipper, I think we can safely say.
Yeah.
Next question again from Carl Jordan. Thank you ever so much, Carl. And he says, Amby, thanks for what you've done for Warwickshire and for cricket in general. Are you going to stay in the game? What are your plans for the future?
Thanks, Carl. That's very nice. No, I'm not going to stay in the game immediately. I'd love to. I'd love the game, but I feel like I need a break from it as a player. I think to go into any other role, cricketing-wise, or stay involved, I'd need to step away from learn how not to be a player, I think, for a little while. But immediate plans are to take a bit of time off. Got a young family, and the last sort of 3 months of lockdown, and I've been one of the very fortunate people, I think, who've actually been able to, been lucky enough to to spend some time with their family at what is a great time to do that, where I wouldn't have been able to before. And it's made me realise that I'd really like to make sure I cash in on this time. So I'm going to have a little bit of time out, see how things go, really. Not put too much pressure on ourselves to need to make any major decisions, and sort of see what comes along, see where the wind blows. But I wouldn't rule out being involved in cricket again. I'm sure I'll miss the game a lot, and I feel I have got potentially some things to offer. But I think a break from being a player as opposed to going straight into coaching would, I think, be good for me, who's been very much seen everything through playing eyes, and I haven't really done too much coaching to sort of fall back on. So I think it'd be fair to myself and to my family to take that time out first and see how we feel in a little while.
You have had a long career and a great career, haven't you? And of course, wicket keepers, of course, probably concentrate more than anybody else in the game, don't they? Because you're looking at every ball. It probably must be the most mentally tiring job in cricket, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair, but I think you learn how to sort of switch on and off. And I mean, as far as concentration, I mean, the levels it takes to have the likes of Jonathan Trott and Ricky Clark stood next to you in your ear for, day on end and day on end. I've got to say that the powers of concentration I've managed to learn over those long days has been even quite impressive to myself, to be honest. And I'm, quite a big fan of myself, as you probably noticed. So, it's been, I'd say it is. I'd say it does require a lot, but yeah, you learn to switch on and off. And as I say, you're kind of lucky you've got some blokes around you to sort of, take your mind off things. I think I'd find it quite hard to stand out at points or mid-off or, fine leg or something on my own. I think I'd get pretty bored out there, to be honest. I don't really know how the guys do it.
Peter Titmus asks, you spent much of your life split between Hove and Birmingham, very different places. Which did you prefer living in and why? Are you going to stay around in Birmingham, Amby?
Not sure. We're sort of selling the house and making some decisions about locations in the next 6 months, I'd say. So it's not a huge rush. Both very, very different places, to be honest. I loved Hove. I loved Brighton when I was down there. I was sort of 17 to 23, 24-year-old lad, and it's sort of coming from coastal part of the country in Australia. Being by the sea was comforting for me, I think, and it was a good experience down there. I love living there. I still enjoy spending time down there. It's the kind of place where, especially around the cricket ground there and Hove itself, it's the kind of place where I think most people would enjoy spending a bit of time. So yeah, that was a great experience. Birmingham, I mean, again, for the age I was in, being a big city around good people, I spent most of my time up here living in and around Moseley, which I really enjoy, the village there itself. And and you've got the city on the doorstep, and there's just so much to offer. So very different places, in my opinion. I've never been a huge city boy. I grew up in a well, be generous to say town called Bob's Farm that had one shop and a school of about 9 of us, I think, and 5 of them were my relatives. So that's how sort of small an area that I grew up in. So Birmingham's been quite a culture shock, but it's been a good experience, and I'm really glad that I had the chance to live in a city like this.
Roger Small asks an interesting question. As a Tottenham Hotspur nut, Amby, Jose Mourinho or Mauricio Pochettino, and why?
Well, it's Pochettino for me. Never personally been a huge Mourinho fan. He's obviously very successful, but I don't know. I think he's a bit of a Marmite character, and I'm not sure he embodies the things I've thought of in the past. Maybe look at him differently when he's in charge of your team, and I'm certainly trying to see the better side of him at the moment. But I was a big fan of Pochettino. I thought he did an absolutely amazing job at Spurs, and it was disappointing to see him go, but maybe some things always have to come to an end. But yeah, Mourinho's he's got a bit of work to do, but he does like to play things his way, I guess. And I think it takes him time to build that. But I think he's in his last few jobs as well as this one, he's used up a lot of time in getting that philosophy put in order. And I think in doing that, you maybe eat up some of the time you're going to get given to actually execute it. So hopefully he gets at the very least a whole season to put it into play. But the way football is, there's you can't predict anything in terms of managers and jobs. But I was a big Pochettino fan. So I think anyone to do with Spurs was he helped us play some great football, turned some good players into very, very good players, and made a team that was good to watch again. And as a fan, I'll be honest, I love watching us win, but I'm a very realistic fan, and I really just enjoy watching us play. And if we play good football, I'm absolutely happy with that. So, as I say, hopefully Mourinho will continue the way he did it when he started, and we see lots of goals. The new Mourinho, perhaps the happy one, maybe he called himself. So, hopefully we see more of that next year. So I just want it to be enjoyable to watch, to be honest. So I'm easy to please in that way.
Back to cricket, Amby. Philip Booth asks, he says, you've played under a number of coaches and captains for Warwickshire and England. Who have you most enjoyed working with?
I have played under quite a few captains, and I've enjoyed all of them. I'll be honest, as a youngster, I thought Chris Adams at Sussex I thought he was a fantastic captain. I think he was a great leader, very sort of, always wanted to be in there. He had a very calm demeanour about himself. Someone who was, quite fierce and strong and, liked to fight, was a good competitor. He had a real calmness in tough situations as a captain, which I remember left a significant mark on me. I thought that's a real leadership quality that I think cricket captains in particular need, because it can be a long, difficult game at times. But I played out some fantastic captains at Warwickshire as well. Jim Troughton was very good. He had his way of doing things. I enjoyed Westy when he was in charge. I actually thought Varun Chopra was a very good captain for us for a few years. I thought he had a real conviction to his decision making, and I think he had a calmness as well that sort of deflected. But he didn't really get fazed about a decision if he made a decision and got it wrong. He just kind of move on to the next decision. And again, that's another quality I think that's really hard to teach. That and calmness, I think, are really crucial, and being able to make decisions as well. And you're right, I did play on a lot of good ones, and it wouldn't be fair to really say I preferred one more than the other. They all had their own styles, and I think they all, whoever they were all leaders who had the team's best interest at the foremost of their thought. And anyone who plays a team game like that is good. Is okay in my book, that's for sure.
Do I remember you captaining the Bears in a championship match once at the back end of 2007? I seem to remember it was a game against Surrey, wasn't it? And you ended up as captain at a really tough time. Yeah,
it was a horrible time. We were terrible, and we were getting relegated and beaten left, right, and centre. And I think Heath Street had passed the captaincy to Darren Maddy, and I think Darren Maddy may have been at the World Cup, perhaps, or he was injured. I'm not really sure, but Mark Greatbatch gave me the captaincy. I think it was only my first or second year, and yeah, the only positive thing out of my captaincy, if you can call it that, was that I gave Chris Wokes his debut against Surrey in that game at Edgbaston. So I remember at the time thinking that could be one to remember, especially when I think the first ball he faced, it might have been Jimmy Ormond, who was bowling pretty well. I think the first ball Wokes he faced, he just nonchalantly flicked it over square leg's head for a one bounce four, and and we all knew he was a bowler, but we hadn't seen him bat much, so we thought, okay, we might have one here. So, as I say, that's about the only kudos I could get from my captaincy, I'd say.
Philip Booth asks, who have you most enjoyed batting with as a partner over the years? And just related to that, who was your favourite batting partner in terms of mid-wicket chat between overs?
I always had a really good record and relationship with Ricky Clark. We used to score a lot of runs together in the middle. I quite enjoyed the time in the middle with Ricky. He was very much like me. He didn't want to put too much on things. It was very relaxed conversations in the middle. We sort of both knew that we knew what we were doing, and we trusted each other. I think we didn't need to explain what we thought the other person was doing, or what we thought the game was doing, or what this guy was trying, or what fields they were looking at and things like that. We knew that we were both well on the button with what was going on there. So I think we had some really good partnerships over the years. So I think we complemented each other with Clarkey being a little bit shorter than me and probably more likely to, play off the back foot. And I was a bit more of a get down the wicket type player. Obviously, it was the other way around. But I think we complemented each other in our difference in stature, perhaps is the right way to say it. But so I'd say, Rick, I think we had some really good partnerships, some really good times, and I did enjoy in the middle. I think he was very similar to me about his attitude towards the time in between balls and in between overs.
Question from Frank Craven. Warwickshire's team that you played in 2010 to 2016 was excellent and obviously won quite a lot of trophies. Do you think it rivals the treble and double winners of 94-95? And how would the two teams get on if they played?
Well, that would be absolutely impossible for me to judge. The team I played in there I thought was a fantastic team, had all bases covered, and had built a relationship over time. That, as I say, we trusted each other. We knew what each other's jobs were. We knew what our own jobs were. And things were really kind of a formality when we played cricket. We just knew what the job was to do. We always turned up with a lot of confidence. And I would imagine, having not played in the side in the 90s, that they were very much the same. They were very much backed each other. And from what I've heard, they understood each other's games inside and out. They had the ability to predict what, a batter was going to do before he did it. They just played that much together, and they knew how each other played. And as I say, I think I can relate to that sort of feeling from that side. But they're two different teams with different players, and that the treble winning side and the side in the 90s was absolutely special. And it'd be impossible for me to judge how those two would compare. But yeah, they're both very good teams in their own right, that's for sure.
It's interesting that you say that the team you played in just went onto the field at times just almost expecting to win, because the guys from 94-95 have said that, and that's an amazing momentum to build, isn't it? It's very difficult, isn't it? But once you've got it, it does take you places, doesn't it?
It is, and it's quite an amazing feeling. I mean, there were games where we'd have a sluggish start, and I think we're still one game got right on top of us. We'd have bad first innings, and they were right on top of us, and there wasn't even a hint that we were in our minds that we were going to lose the game. It was just a case of whether we were going to win it or run out of time trying to win it, sort of thing. And that was it. We ended up going on and winning the game, and it just seemed like there was no question about it. And that's an amazing place to get to as a team in sport at this level. It's absolutely incredible, and really treasured moments when you're rocking up to work with those levels of confidence. But it takes a lot to get there. And yeah, you want to hang on to it while you can. And maybe we didn't make as good of it as we could. I think we only won the one championship. So there's proof there that it's harder to stay at the top than it is to get there, I think.
And of course, you were part of the T20 winning side as well, which was another very special day, wasn't it?
Very special. I thoroughly enjoyed that one. That was an amazing experience of my first time personally in the T20 finals day, and it was incredible. I didn't do much apart from dislocate my thumb and managed to not have to bat, which was a bonus because I couldn't feel my hand. But yeah, that was an incredible day. And Edgbaston, I played in a test match there, which was special. But to see it rocking like it was that night was absolutely, yeah. It still makes the sort of head up and back of my neck just thinking about that. It was a tremendous night and a great evening, and just about a week probably that followed it as well was pretty good. It just it was a very, very good celebration for a very, very good night.
Another question from Frank Craven, Amby. What exactly happened on the balcony at Old Trafford in the CB semi-final versus Lancashire in 2012?
Yeah, I think I mentioned that earlier. We played, I think, a couple of back-to-back games. I think we played Notts and I got some runs, and then we got up to Scarborough, which was a long trip, and I'd got some runs there, and then we came back down to Old Trafford. So a lot of time in the car. I'd done a bit of batting, and my body suffers if I bat a long period of time, which luckily doesn't happen too often. Otherwise, I'd be in a wheelchair probably. But it does seem to, I think I get so low, I seem to cause my body some problems. But I remember rocking up that morning and just thinking, I'm really, really sore here. I'm used to being stiff and sore, but I remember thinking, this is really bad. I feel right on the edge of something going here. And I had a quick chat to Mozzie, and we just sort of had a bit of a stretch, and took a few painkillers and some sort of muscle relaxants, and away we went. And I think we won the toss and batted, and I think I was in at 4 my third or fourth, and I had sort of thigh pads on. I was sat next to Ian Blackwell and just having a chat. I had my sort of leg just resting up on the edge of the wall of the pavilion, and I just went to bring my leg down, and basically it was like someone just stabbed me right in the quad and sort of twisted it, and I'd managed to tear right through right into the quad muscle. And so I sort of screeched, and Ian Blackwell nearly fell off his chair and didn't know what had happened. He was sort of very startled by that. There was no warning sign it was coming. So then I had to try and explain that I think I've torn my quad, and no one could understand how or why, least of all myself. So then we had to make poor Richard Johnson come flying up the motorway to get there just in time to take the field, because I was absolutely nowhere. But I have no idea. I think it just caught up with me from the couple of weeks previous, and yeah, it was just it's I'd say that's a strange way to get injured, but I've actually had a shoulder operation. My shoulder's pretty knackered from actually falling asleep by a pool on holiday, and with my shoulder like that, and I sort of fell asleep and managed to tear a big hole in my shoulder. I had to have an operation for that one. So I've got a bit of form in injuring myself doing things other than playing cricket. I actually haven't got many injuries from cricket itself. So, it's, I guess you can't see those ones coming, but I still get quite a bit of stick for that. That was a little bit embarrassing in the end, really.
It's a good effort to get injured sleeping, mate. There's not many pull that one off. Peter has just sent in a very interesting question that I've always wondered about guys that are in cricket for a long time. He says, do you keep all your old cricket memorabilia, such as shirts and medals? Or if not, what do you do with them?
You kind of do and you don't. You end up with a lot of stuff and a lot of bags. And I've always tried to keep sort of a shirt or something from each season, and as much sort of memorable stuff, as you say, from good wins and good seasons and tours and things like that. I kept a lot of them in my old house. I had a sort of basement, and one winter it flooded, and about 90% of it got ruined in a flood. Threw most of that away, but my sister and my dad were over visiting from Australia at the time, and they went through it all and basically salvaged anything that was remotely salvageable. And they took it all home. And I mean, my dad basically just lives in my old cricket clothing now. That's all he basically wears in Australia. So I tend to send it back to him now. Him and my sister, my younger sister, they quite like the warm, comfy clothes in the winter. So it gets used would be a good thing. But I'll be honest, I give a lot when I sort of clear out. I give a lot of it to sort of charities and things like that. And I have this weird image in my head that there's some young fellow or young girl in a country that they're not well off in their village or whatever, and they've maybe been given a drop and they're running around with a sort of a Warwickshire shirt with Ambrose on the back. I still have an image of that in my head. I'm absolutely certain that doesn't happen, but somewhere I think I'm spreading the word about the great Warwickshire Bears. So maybe it does. I don't know. Maybe someone will find someone someday in another country and be able to send me a picture.
You refer to the great Warwickshire Bears there, Amby. I mean, you didn't come through the system at Edgbaston, did you? You came in from Sussex, but you did appear very early on to buy into the Bears, and I haven't seen many people represent the Bear with more pride. You've become very much part of the club, and it's part of you, I guess.
Absolutely. I think I'm still proud to have played for Sussex. That was my first opportunity over here. And some great memories from there as well. But I do remember that side I played in was an older side. We had, I think me and Matt Pryor was sort of 17, 18, 19, and then the next youngest guy was probably 30, 31. It was a very experienced team, and they'd played against, we're talking 2000, 2001. They'd played against the Warwickshire side of the 90s, and they'd been beaten black and blue by them, and there were plenty of scars. And I remember Mushtaq sort of taking, I think, 14 wickets in a game, and we beat Warwickshire at Hove for the first time in I don't even know how long. And the celebration after that one game, that 1 4-day win, was unlike one I'd ever seen at the club. So these senior players, and we were all sort of partying, and there were guys who used to go home, have one beer and go home after the game, and everyone was there having such a good time and in great spirits. And I remember quite a few of them saying, you don't realise how badly these guys used to beat us up for so long. They're so good. To beat them, that's like our Everest. They've got so many games over us. I don't remember beating Warwickshire again, to be honest, with Sussex. So, they it didn't really change anything. But, the way that the club was held, the regard it was held in by those other very senior players who I respected certainly rubbed off on me. And then obviously to come to Edgbaston, I made my debut at Edgbaston as well. I used to play, on the Australian version of Brian Lara cricket, which was Shane Warne cricket, on the computer, and used to absolutely love Edgbaston. I thought there was some real character about it. To actually be at the stadium was amazing. Made my debut there, as I say, and then to get an opportunity to go to a place that is, one of the biggest clubs, one of the biggest cricketing clubs in the world. I knew it was special. And I knew it was an opportunity, and it was something that you don't just come to Warwickshire and hopefully have a career. You come to Warwickshire to win and to be a part of great things and legacies and trophies and pennants and medals, and that's what it's about. I came here with that attitude, and I'm really glad that I found other people with the same opinion and got to enjoy amazing times here.
You have had a terrific career, Tim. You seem quite comfortable with the decision that it's going to end at the end of this season, but next April will be quite strange, won't it? When everybody's rocking up, and what will you be doing?
I think it will. Again, I don't really know quite what to expect. I said to a few of the lads after I'd made the announcement public and things like that, and you get this outpouring of really nice comments, and you hear from people you haven't spoke to for quite a while, and some people you don't expect say nice things about you, and it was a really nice day or two, to be honest. So it was really, really nice for the ego and the self-esteem. So I said to some of the lads, I really recommend announcing your retirement. That was a very enjoyable day. But how the actual retirement will go, I don't really know. I don't really know. I'm sure I'll miss large parts of it. I'll miss the competing. I'll miss being on the field. I'll miss trying to win games. I'll miss winning games. I'll miss the camaraderie with my teammates. But I had my spell. I had my turn, and I feel I made the most of it. And it's other people's turn now to have their own stories. To make their own experiences and enjoy. What this great game, this great country, this great club at Warwickshire has to offer. And as I say, it's time for other people to enjoy that. And I've had mine, and I'll hang on to those dearly for the rest of my life. But that's I think mine's done. It's someone else's turn now.
Well, you will be a huge miss around Edgbaston, mate. One more question. It's a controversial one from Roger Sharrock. He says, is there such a thing as a good Australian beer?
As a good Australian beer?
Yeah.
Not in my experience. No, quite simply. No. I've never really been a huge fan. There was a Tui's Old, I think, that came out quite a long time ago that was sort of a mixture between a lager and maybe an ale or something like that. It wasn't as gassy and fizzy as all the Australian beer you tend to get. Which I'm not a huge fan, and I wouldn't be seen, within 100 yards of a pint of Foster's over here. So, I haven't really got any recommendations there. I'm afraid I'll stick to the good English and European brews, in my opinion.
Well, Amby, it's been a great hour. I'm sure the members have loved hearing from you, and they're looking forward to seeing you again on the field for the next few weeks, all being well. Thank you ever so much for joining us, mate, and all the best. Thanks, Brian. I really enjoyed that. I hope I didn't ramble on too much, but thanks very much. That was great fun. Thanks for having me. Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Amby, and everybody for your company again this evening and your questions, of course. Next week, our special guest at 6 p.m. next Thursday will be the Bears skipper, Will Rhodes, who will soon, at long last, get out there and lead the Bears in his first year as club captain. So please let us have your questions for Will. Until then, have a lovely week. And on behalf of Warwickshire County Cricket Club, please take care and stay safe.